We called them like, what's going on? You looking for me? And so I had agreed for questioning. And since that day, it took 18 years before I seen, you know what I mean, the light of day again. So my name is Dante Farmer. Born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I'm 38 years old now. Initially was sentenced to 25 to life at the age of 18. You know, I'm the owner of Dante Farmer Legal Consulting and certified gang expert both with the state of Oregon and also with the feds in the District of Oregon. I'm also the outreach ministry leader of the Greater St. Stephen's Missionary Baptist Church under Pastor Kimberly Black. I say by the time I hit middle school, when I went to Michigan, when I had left, because here it's more multicultural. And so you don't really see any boundaries or anything like that, any segregation or any racism. If you're not looking for it, you could be blind to it. But when I went to Michigan and how you could tell the segregation there, especially in the school system. And, you know what I mean, it was 95%, you know what I mean, black. And so that was a culture shock. Honestly, I would say my first experience, I was about 7 years old, and the neighbors called the police on my mom for leaving me home by myself. Now for us, that's, okay, you don't answer the door for nobody, you watch TV, okay, I'll be right back. Okay, you know what I mean, simple, normal. And I was removed from the home and taken to a group home. This is 7 years old. And so you see it then, but you don't really, I guess, can fathom the impact of it until you get older. I would say when my grandmother was alive, like the family was together, you remember those times. I was 5 when she had passed. When the head of the household, you know what I mean, passes, everybody's left to do their own thing. And so it was just me and my mom for a while. So she's the baby of the family. And so I'm the first grandson, you know what I mean? And so when she passes, just, you start, you know what I mean, seeing what, you know what I mean, life really is. You know what I mean? As far as having to really fend for yourself, it ain't like how it once was. So, you know what I mean, growing up, you can have different pockets in Portland, you know what I mean, that people grow up with, whether, you know, from grade school to middle school, you know what I mean, to high school. But you always see each other in the neighborhood, whether it's at the park, at the bus stop, you know, whether if it's at the store, you know, we see each other. And a lot of people I knew from being in group homes, from being in school. And so you could factor that in, you know what I mean, with family or groupings in neighborhoods that, you know, people just happen, you know what I mean, to side with. Now, sometimes it could be those family ties, you know what I mean, that draws them to a particular, you know what I mean, set. Or it could be, you know what I mean, friends. Everybody has their own story on how, you know what I mean, they got on the path that they got on. You could say in the 4th grade, it really started, me and the individual, you know, 4th graders and 5th graders. That's how it usually starts at school, you know what I mean? And you got some people that kind of look over, you know, when you got the whole hazing thing or whatever case may be, oh, they're just kids having fun. And then me, I don't like you put your hands on me, especially if I ain't did nothing for you to go out of your way, you know what I mean? So it takes, you know, we're gonna defend ourselves. And so that's where it always was between me and him. But then once we got older into our teens, the minute he, you know what I mean, sided, I sided, and it was out of, you know what I mean, spite for, okay, this is what this is a personal issue with me and you. So that's where it was always was. And then alone, when you take on that banner, whatever else comes along with it. I'll say that was one of the reasons that made me choose to really go full-fledged with it. But as far as the lifestyle, as far as streets and everything, I've always, you know what I mean, fought, you know what I mean, and everything like that. So it's like you get along, you know, when people, things come up, okay, you ride with who you ride with. And at that particular, you know what I mean, time, it was, this is what it is. It was the Bloods that I was having the issues with, and I lived in a predominantly Blood neighborhood, but there were Crips that lived down there as well, and we all knew each other. So for us, it was just, this is just what it is. We know what it is when we happen to walk to the store and happen to engage, you know, people, it could either be, you know what I mean, friendly, or it could be, you know what I mean, not so friendly. But I've had probably more issues with Crips than I did. I have Bloods.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, what you hear through the media about the history of the Crips and Bloods, people think that it's always that, and sometimes it isn't always that. Sometimes it could be one issue that turns into another that happens to have gang ties. I get a phone call from my mom, said that the police came looking for me at my grandpa's house, which is out in North Portland. My mom lived in Northeast Portland. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm on my way to the house. So we called them like, what's going on? You looking for me? And so I had agreed for questioning. And since that day, it took 18 years before I seen, the light of day again. Honestly, because I was well known in that neighborhood, because that's the same neighborhood I grew up in, and I've always been known for a fighter. And so that was one of the big issues with why I was targeted, growing up in that neighborhood. And then it turned into a gang thing in regards to, well, he's a known Crip in a known Blood neighborhood. But then it's like so ironic, well, where did you guys come and pick me up from when I called you guys? And who with the store and area? So everybody was like, no, he lives here, but they tried to turn it into he didn't live here. He came over here, with a specific purpose, and this is what that purpose was, because the motive is a robbery. How come I wasn't never charged with a robbery? Never charged with theft. Never charged with, if that's the case, aggravated murder, felony, But it's like just murder with a firearm, one count. Bow. This is what they had. This is what they're going with. But not knowing that there was a totally another investigation at the same time with the same detective that had other information on another person that looked like me, but they excluded that. They were upset with me because they said that I was calm and relaxed and answering, questions and everything, that I'm trying to play good cop bad cop. Well, and so when we got down to where we was getting ready to do take the booking, the lady asked, so what are you guys charging him with? And they looked at each other just kind of like, well, I guess we just charged him with murder then. And then when they said that before she took the photo, I'm thinking, and you can see it looked like I'm thinking about something, but I'm like, well, how the hell I'm gonna get out of this one? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I didn't agree for questioning, thinking I was gonna go back home and And then it took all those years. But from day one, I was already working on my case. One of the cooks that used to work at the store on 8th and Deacon, where they said that this took place, he knew the law, and he just happened, to be there. But he remembered me also as a little kid. And so he taught me the basics on investigations and the detectives and everything. And then the rest I learned from watching the movie The Hurricane. I applied everything, every tactic, everything that went on in the Hurricane case, and that's how I learned the law. I was hopeful because the jury stayed out over 15 and a half hours deciding which verdict they was going to render, but they had came back and asked the judge for clarification on reasonable doubt. And the judge failed to give them that jury instruction, sent them home over the weekend, and then they came back after the weekend, and then they found me, unanimous decision, guilty. But when we had kind of polled them, it was 7 not guilty, 5 guilty. So how did 12? So there was a lot of politics involved all the way from day one. Well, to be honest, the first day that when I got convicted, I already knew either we're going to win this at trial or we're going to win it on an appeal, period. There was no other options. It's either we're going to win here or we're going to win it on appeal. And so I told the judge before, she sentenced me that I might do 10 years or 15, but I promise you'll get back the rest of the time I don't do. The main issues that I won dealing with this attorney had to do with ineffective assistance to counsel. And the main issues had to do with the forensic expert that she hired put in his report that weapon associated with somebody else, not associated with me, and the same information of a person that looks like me, this gun came back as a positive match. But it's not associated with me, it's associated with this other person. But the state's forensics on it, on that same issue, were inconclusive. The issue was, we got who we want, we don't care about it. So to them, it was like, we don't want this getting brought in. We want the focus right here. But it's like, how I found all that out was because I asked for the detective's notes. And so that's how I found out that everything didn't match. Because to generate any police report, any trial testimony, it goes off of the detective's notes. To generate all this, why don't your report match this in your trial? And so then nothing matched. And so with getting convicted, now the focus was, how can we get the conviction reversed? There was a 911 caller that was suppressed. Mind you, this is the first 911 caller. It took us a year before we located her. And then by the time we finally located her, it was already too late. I had already got convicted in a sense, but we had a signed affidavit. This isn't the person. And so we put in newly discovered evidence. We have a hearing on it. The judge denied the motion. And then we find out from the state that the detective wrote an affidavit. What he did was, after we submitted a report and an affidavit, he went out there, talked to her, but he never had her sign anything, never did no recording or anything. But he went back to his office, wrote a report, and then he signed the report as, this is what she told me, and so I had my motion for a new trial denied. Court of Appeals, we got denied direct appeal. And so the direct appeal had denied us with a favorable opinion. And what that means is their reasoning for denying us was because we failed to challenge the accuracy of that detective's report. And so they pretty much gave us a blueprint as to, this is why I couldn't grant this, but if this is done, this is how this can be corrected. Okay, so I used my own case law, going through the post-conviction courts, and had the case reversed using my own case law, because now we had the detective come down and we had that 911 caller come down. The 911 caller get on the stand, no, Your Honor, that's not the person that I saw. So now the detective's report is now, being questioned as being inaccurate because he had no other proof other than his own word, but I proved in my case alone, this wasn't his first time writing inaccurate reports. So we get the case reversed in 2012. The state appeals it. In later in 2012, they had appealed it. And so when they had appealed it, it made me eligible for immediate release. So I put in 2013 before the same judge in Salem to be released. And so she said, well, have your lawyer, file a motion, I'll consider, your terms of release. And so I'm thinking, well, you just let a dude go on his third murder trial at a $50,000 bail. I'm like, you just granted me post-conviction relief, I got at least a bail coming. That's what I'm thinking. So while we're waiting to figure out, who's going to, file the motion and everything like that, she goes out on sick leave because, you know what I mean, she had got diagnosed with cancer. That puts me before another judge. A judge who heard about the case but had no interest on releasing it. So the appeal didn't get rendered until 2016. When that whole situation took place, pretty much the case got reversed again, which means I won, now I lost. And the attorney that I had at this particular time, he didn't even bother going to the hearing. So there was nobody there at before the Court of Appeals to argue my case. They went off of a brief that he submitted because in his mind, we won, they lost. We normally don't have oral argument. This is unusual for them to be doing this. I'm gonna submit this brief in and let the facts speak for themselves. Well, that was a terrible move because the Court of Appeals denied me. Luckily, it was one judge that dissented, that didn't believe in it. I end up having what you call an en banc decision. And what that means, that's the full panel of all 11 instead of just the 3 coming. Now all 11 are weighing in. And so one of the judges that dissented, 2 other judges dissented with her. But this judge that dissented is the same judge that granted me that favorable decision on direct appeal. And so when she dissented, it was kind of like, in so many words, I believe that the judge made the correct decision on this because of this, because it was her ruling. So at this particular time, 2016, I'm in working in the infirmary at OSP, and most of us that was up there on the graveyard shift, all lifers. But I didn't really go to a lot of the lifers meetings and everything like that. It's like I help them, support them, but it was one of those, for me, a personal, I ain't got no life sentence. And so I don't want to live like I got one, even though it's like, you know you got one. It's like, but no, I'm not accepting that. So I didn't go to this particular meeting. But it was Governor Brown's general counsel, Misha Isaac, that had came in to do a legal seminar in regards to different forms of clemency. And so when my coworkers had told me in regards to the different forms of clemency that there is, one of the issues was manifest injustice. And I was like, okay, this might be a route, you know what I mean, to go on this. And so I had contacted my appeals attorney in regards to the clemency, and because she represented me as my counsel on the appeal, she couldn't represent me for the clemency, but had referred me to the Lewis and Clark Law School that was just getting ready to start their criminal justice reform clinic. And Venetia Mayhew, the attorney, she had just graduated, and she was getting ready to study for the exam, for the bar exam. And pretty much was like, soon as I, you know what I mean, finish studying for the bar exam and everything, I'll be working on clemencies full time. I'll be contacting you, you know what I mean, again. So I'm like, okay. Now, by the time clemency came, and it was like, well, we're gonna have to bring up this issue, you know what I mean, about, you know what I mean, the gangs. Okay, now we can talk about it. This is my life story. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what caused me, you know what I mean, to change, you know what I mean, now. And this is what I've been doing since I've been in here, which was totally opposite of the picture that the state, you know what I mean, tried to present. Before we go to the governor, the Supreme Court accepts my case. They only accept 5% of the petitions that come through. So I was one of the 5%. And so everybody was like, okay, well, we'll write a brief. And based on that, the Supreme Court, Oregon Supreme Court, ruled unanimously and overturned the conviction. Again, citing that the post-conviction courts made the correct ruling. It was kind of like, oh, okay, so what's gonna happen now? So everybody's thinking, okay, the case will get dismissed. We got a Supreme Court. And I'm just, nah, I don't think it's gonna be that easy. They were like, well, why would you think they will fight? I was like, you see how long I've been here? I expect them to fight even harder, you know what I mean? And that's exactly what they did by the time we got back to the county for a new trial. But I was prepared. The deal that we ended up structuring where you get released straight from the county and you don't have to go back to prison. And that's what was the holdup, because they didn't want to release me. They was trying to send me back. Even the sheriff's office was kind of like, oh, we don't disregard what the judge and said when it says immediate release, you know what I mean, at this time. But they were trying to, this usually don't happen. So he probably meant, no, ain't no mistakes. Release me, because then it would have turned into something else, you know. And so that whole experience, I'm talking about, we had family there, we had lawyers there, we had professors there, everybody waiting for me to be released that night from the Justice Center. We was all going out to eat. They sent everybody home and told them that he's not getting out. There ain't nothing that we can do. He's going, he has to go, you know what I mean, back to Coffee Creek. And so it was kind of like, okay. But by 11 o'clock came, they hurry up and emergency rushed me, you know what I mean? But a lot of people think it had to do, they didn't want no, you know what I mean, support to be there, and didn't want no publicity. And even when they came out with their little cover story, it wasn't a story bashing me. It was just, okay, let's keep this quiet, let's sweep this up under the rug type of thing. When we had went through the whole settlement hearing, it was to the point to where they was like, we're not just gonna dismiss this. It can't be no contest plea. It has to be a guilty, you know, plea to pretty much justify that we didn't make any mistakes. And so I'm just looking at my attorney just like, is that all they, you know, me concerned about? It's like, now I ain't no saint, you know what I mean? But I'm most definitely not guilty of this. But I was like, I am responsible for some of what's been taking place in the culture. I think that's why I'm not too much fazed by it, because you have to take your responsibility on the shape that some of this is in right now. That's me, you know what I mean, carrying my cross, bearing my load in regards to the work that I do now. And the passion that I have on fighting, you know what I mean, for others, kind of like, one, from a legal standpoint. The other point would be, you know what I mean, from a street standpoint. And then also, you know what I mean, from a religious standpoint, but not coming off, just giving it to them real, just like, I think if somebody is really about what they about, and you showing them another way, more so, it's okay to love where you from. But you ain't got to go through all that. It's like, yeah, we're not all negative. Yeah, we might, you know what I mean, have some hoops and hurdles that we got to jump through the long way as we, you know what I mean, we figure it out. But a lot of us ain't all bad.